day and welcome to the second episode where we talk about pain in general. Today we're going to look at pain through the ages and consider what we can learn from the history of pain. I am Annemarie Oberroser and I'm excited to explore the history of pain and how different perspectives on pain influence the understanding and treatment of pain in Western medicine. So let's get started. But first, if you, like me, always dozed off in history class, you might not be too excited about this episode. However, if you think about it, we can learn so much from history and what has been recorded in history books through the years. We can learn from past mistakes and use it to guide our actions today. We can also get new ideas and insights when we look at the discussions and what has worked or not worked over the years. Our history shapes who we are today. It impacts our beliefs, dictate how we feel about something, and eventually shape our actions. So let's look at the timeline, and we're going to start at the earliest times up until where we are today. Trepanation, or cutting a hole in the skull, was used as treatment for migraines to let the demons out. People had no understanding of how the body functioned, and illness was regarded as either a curse from evil forces or a punishment from the gods or God. Treatments therefore focused on purification and to drive out demons such as trepanation or even bloodletting, using leeches or cutting to let out the bad blood. Early philosophers often had philosophical debates about pain, and Aristotle, a famous Greek philosopher, was no exception. Is pain a physical experience, similar to itching, warm or cold, or an emotion more similar to sadness, happiness, anger? Now, if you think about it, tolerable heat or cold doesn't result in the same emotions that can be found when someone is in pain, often causing people to become angry. And therefore, Aristotle said, pain is a passion of the soul, an intense emotional experience. He also believed that pain should be used to educate children and to build character, a belief that's unfortunately still very common today. So what are your thoughts about corporal punishment and the idea that pain builds character? I've already mentioned that illness was regarded as either a curse from evil forces or punishment from the gods or God. Although there are still many people who believe this to a certain extent today, some events through history started to change this belief. Instrumental in debunking this was Hippocrates, also called the father of medicine. He said that pain is caused when there is an imbalance in the four humours, that's liquids inside the body. He believed that pain was beneficial for diagnosis, and he kept very good record of pain, such as the intensity or the description of pain. Claudius Galen, a physician of the Roman emperors in the 2nd century, was the first to localize the mind in the brain. Remember, in those days, people believed that the soul was a rational part of the body and claimed it would be found in the heart, not the head. Pain is seen as a sensation or a physical feeling or a perception resulting from something that happened within the body, exactly the opposite of what Aristotle believed. He proposed the first definition of pain. He said it was the sudden change of temperament, the balance of the four forces of blood, phlegm, choler, and black bile, and the rupture of continuity. During the Middle Ages, pain was used as a tool for teaching a variety of truths and should only be relieved when dangerous to the patient. In Christianity, they regarded pain as something to be endured because it prepared us for the glories of heaven, makes us humble, reminded of Christ who suffered willingly. Remember that any religious interpretation to justify pain, even today, has got value to help people to cope and must be respected. It must just never be an excuse not to treat pain. René Descartes, French philosopher of the 1600s, proposed the first model of pain. Remember, Galen had the first definition, but René had the first model where he compared it with a bell tower. Now, he said the harder you pull on the string of a bell, the louder the bell will sound. illustrated it using the following picture. The more physical damage, so the closer you are to the fire, the more your skin is damaged, the more pain you will experience. We're going to discuss that model further in further episodes as well. So in the mid-1800s, they discovered ether and chloroform. Now you would think that everybody would be ecstatic and immediately start to use this wonder drug. But can you believe it? There were actually some people who questioned the ethics of operating on an unconscious patient. Remember, it was never done before, and people had to bite on a stick to prevent them from screaming during an operation before ether and chloroform. Others were concerned that relieving pain might slow the healing process. So you can see, as with any new movement, even ether and chloroform was met with some resistance in the beginning. Did you know that the term, that which does not kill us makes us stronger, came from Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher of the late 1800s? Today, it's a theme of many songs or motivational quotes. However, many people use this to say that pain will make children stronger. And as you will see in future episodes, this is not the case at all. The first person to write about how the context and meaning of pain influenced the actual experience of pain was a Second World War anaesthetist, Dr. Henry Beecher. He served in the US Army and accompanied troops to the war. And he experienced an interesting phenomenon. The soldiers that he treated on the battlefront required much less pain medication than civilian patients back home with similar injuries. He concluded that this was because of the positive emotions of the soldiers. They were, in the first place, relieved to be alive and away from the battlefield, but secondly, the injury was a ticket home. What was also interesting was the militarization of pain in the mid-1900s. That was after the World Wars. Pain medication was now freely available, and pain was no longer seen as something that should be passively endured. And people started to use warlike metaphors to describe pain, such as pain is the enemy that must be defeated, or we must fight against pain, or we must combat pain. African traditional medication was initially banned in South Africa. The South African Medical Association outlawed traditional medicine in 1953. But in the 1990s, in democratic South Africa, efforts have been made to recognize traditional medicine as an important aspect of healthcare. African traditional medicine view illness and pain as caused by natural as well as supernatural means, including spiritual or social imbalance. So where Western history has been written down and information carried over through books and other written materials, stories, songs, and poems is an important part of how information is carried over through generations in African culture. It describes the stories of fallen heroes and ancestors, and ancestors is used to teach and influence the children. And with regards to pain, African children are taught to deal with pain in a stoic and resilient manner. The significance of pain in the African culture is seen as a natural part of disease or injury and not, as in the case in Western medicine, as a separate entity. It's also important to acknowledge the gender differences that exist in the African culture, where definite gender differences exist among members of the groups interviewed by Norkia and Albertine in a study done in 2015. In men, the expression of pain can almost be described as a cultural taboo associated with weakness and lack of honor and courage. These are very important aspects to remember and acknowledge when working with children. So in the mid-1900s, pain was acknowledged as a field of medicine. And as with any academic field, it's important to take note of the definitions in this field. In the first place, Margaret McCaffrey stated that pain is whatever the experiencing person says it is, existing whenever the experiencing person says it does. This definition was already published in 1968 and is still referred to today because it is so relevant. It is important to always believe the patient, and we will address this especially with regards to children in future episodes. The IASB formulated their definition of pain in 1979 as follows. pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage or described in terms of such damage. Over the years, they realized, however, that the last part of the definition is actually exclusive towards nonverbal people, such as patients on a ventilator, people with disabilities, and also children who cannot describe their pain. They therefore changed the definition to now read an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage. ISP, or the International Association for the Study of Pain, was founded in 1973 and contributed significantly to establish pain as an acknowledged field in medicine. They also started with a special interest group focusing on pain in children. Pain SA, the South African chapter of the International Association for the Study of Pain, has also got a pediatric special interest group. And you will find the websites at the end of this video, and you can also follow them on social media. And today, the science of pain has evolved. Functional MRIs can even show the neurological activity in the brain where pain is processed. But that does not imply that we fully understand pain. And yes, even though we are one nation in South Africa, each one of us has a very different and a unique perspective on pain. And that is something you must always remember when working with children. But this is what makes this field so interesting, and I hope you're also looking forward to further explore this topic with me in the episodes to come. In the next episode, we're going to look at the pain pathways and how pain is processed in the body. So stay tuned. Goodbye.